Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 24 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the South Donetsk direction, where the Russians, after a very short operational pause, began new attempts, new wave of offensive operation in direction of the village by the name of Bagayavlenka. So if you remember, during the previous week the Russians established complete control over the village by the name of Prichistovka. Then there was a short operational pause, and starting of yesterday's evening we begin receiving additional updates about further Russian attempts to attack the Ukrainian positions in the city of Vuhledar and Vodyane. Let's talk about the city of Vuhledar, about the stronghold. Today, this morning of the 9th of September, we got the first video that confirms that the Russians managed to cross the river of Kashlygach and to capture the farms in the southern part. Currently we have just one photo. We are waiting for additional video, and as soon as we get the video, we will change the color map in Russian favor. But once again, summarizing everything that we can read from pro-Russian posts, the Russians managed to cross the river and to capture the farms, and they got very close to the edge Ukrainian positions inside of the Vuhledar itself. So currently the distance between the Ukrainian positions in the southwestern part of the stronghold and the Russian positions in farms is less than 2 kilometers. So this attack was conducted by the Russians just to pin down the Ukrainians. To force, they introduced additional reserves in the southwestern direction and not to allow the Ukrainians to run away and to escape the possible encirclement. Now let's talk about the village of Vodyane. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians were bombing and attacking the coal mine in the northwestern part of the village. A lot of geolocations were published by pro-Russian sources, how the Russians were attacking the communication equipment, the machine gun equipment, the mortar positions, and many other different positions of the armored forces of Ukraine in this direction. And later we got the first report from pro-Ukrainian mappers, and according to them, the Russians were managed to establish complete control over the village by the name of Vodyane. So furthermore, the Russians managed to take under control the village, and the most important, they managed to secure the area. And furthermore, according to different reliable pro-Russian sources, this morning on the 9th of September, the Russians launched a full-scale offensive operation further in the northwestern direction, and currently there are very heavy clashes for the territory of the coal mine South Donbas number 3. So this territory is no longer under complete Ukrainian control. Currently there are very heavy clashes, and most likely the Russians will be able to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this territory further in the northwestern direction to the next stronghold that located just a few kilometers to the northwest, so let's say in 1 kilometer. So, summarizing everything, if the Russians are able to take under control this stronghold, the Russians will be able to use these big buildings, these high-rise constructions, for their communication equipment, for cameras, for radars, and so on, which will obviously intensify the Russian attempts and Russian activity towards the village city of Vuhledar. Most likely, the Ukrainians would be forced sooner or later to fall back from this direction to the city of Bagayavlenka. Now, let's move further. Let's talk about Katerynivka. We have a lots of very interesting updates from this territory as well. The Russians haven't been attacking this territory for a very long period of time. Basically, after the fall of Konstantinovka, the Russians didn't make any movements in the north, further in the northwestern direction, but starting of 7th, 8th, and 9th of September, we received significant number of geolocations and updates about the situation in this direction. And furthermore, according to very reliable sources, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to enter the village of Katerynivka itself, and currently the Russians are digging in deeper. So now, from now on, let's say according to different sources, by the 9th of September of 2024, the Russians managed to enter the village of Katerynivka, and now they try to create and to expand their foothold. Obviously, this is very impressive, let's say, update if this information is correct, and if this information is correct, the situation for the Ukrainians, as we can see, is very poor, and most likely the Ukrainians have redeployed the positions in the force of 79th Air Assault Brigade, because they were promised that after the Battle of Konstantinovka they would be sent to the western part of Ukraine for some rotation, to get some rest and something like this. So maybe the Russians were waiting for this moment, and when this moment happened, the Russians began full-scale offensive. So summarizing everything, the South Donetsk direction, the South Donetsk defense belt of the armored forces of Ukraine collapsed. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction. We have additional progress, we have additional updates, and the most important are coming from the defense belt between the city of Ukrainsk and the city of Girnik. We haven't received almost anything from this direction when talking about the videos and geolocations. Just this is the only video we've received from the city of Ukrainsk. In this video we can see that the entire city and the village to the east by the name of Lisovka are set on fire. A lot of fire anomalies, most likely there are very heavy clashes right now, but we still haven't received anything that can confirm the Russian presence in the territory in the border of the city of Ukrainsk. Furthermore, the Russian sources reported that this morning they began full-scale offensive operation in the direction of the city of Girnik. I'll remind you that during the previous days we got a lot of updates that the first Russian sabotage and reconnaissance group already entered the northern part of this stronghold, but today, as I understand, the Russians began full-scale offensive with the use of the regular army. So let's wait for additional updates, and most likely today the Russians maybe will publish us some flags or some videos that confirm additional progress on the ground. Now let's talk about the city of Selydove. There are very heavy clashes right now, and the main clashes are taking place in the same area, in the area of the bridge that connects the village of Mikhailovka and the Selydove itself. In this video we can see another attempt from the Russian side to attack the bridge with the purpose to block the area and not to allow the Ukrainians to redeploy their forces from one side of the agglomeration to another. And according to this video, as you can see, half of the bridge was ruined, and currently the Russians managed to block this area. Now let's move further. Let's talk about Novohrodivka. As you can see, we have made some changes on the map, and according to information we have, and the most important, according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, as a result of clashes in this direction, the Russians managed to establish complete control over this territory. So this information was confirmed by a Minister of Defense, and this is a reliable source, and based on this report we have adjusted Novohrodivka completely. Because as you know, we still haven't received anything from the western part. Probably this situation happens due to security reason. As you can see, most of Novohrodivka is normal, no damage, everything is fine. People can return back to the city and to restore their lives. Probably not today, not tomorrow, but in the months when the Russians are able to move the front line further in the western direction. Of course, there is still a lot of work to do, but it's not the same situation as we can see in Avdiivka or in Volchansk or in Marinka. And now let's move to the most important things. During the previous 24 hours, we got a lot of geolocations of how the Russians were FPV droning the Ukrainian forces in Ukrainian positions further in the western direction. We have several geolocations in the vicinity of the village of Lisovka, Dachinska, Zelene. In these videos, we can see how the Russians were FPV droning the Ukrainian equipment, Ukrainian tanks, Ukrainian just trucks, just regular vehicles that Ukrainians were using for supply purposes. And the most important, that just a few days ago we got report that the Russians entered the village of Lisovka. Now we got the videos of significant number of geolocations of FPV drone strikes, so we can make a conclusion that the Russians decided, after a very short regrouping, after they managed to secure and to clear the village of Novohrodivka, the Russians began full-scale offensive operation further in the western direction, and currently the Russians have just one purpose, just one goal: to take under control the village of Dachinskaya. So, and if the Russians are able to do this, if the Russians are able to take under control these territories, including the landfill that's located in the southwestern part of the stronghold of the city of Novohrodivka, then the Russians will be able to cut the main supplying road M30 from Pokrovsk to Selydove itself, and this will allow the Russians, with the control over Ukrainsk and Girnik, to semi-encircle the city of Selydove and to force the Ukrainians to fall back. So after Ukrainian statements that they managed to stabilize the situation in the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians began full-scale offensive operation and managed to achieve significant results. Now let's move further and let's talk about the area in the vicinity of the city by the name of Ocheretina. The Ukrainian sources published the video of how how they were FPV droning and attacking another Russian wave of attack. This is very interesting because this direction was silent for a very long period of time. There were no activities from the Russian side, and now we see that the Russians resume their attempts to improve their positions around Cheretsina, around Novoalexandrovka and Arkhangelsk. And according to this video, the Russians were moving from Cheretsina in the northwestern direction. We see significant number of geolocations. So the Russians were heading towards these fields and these positions of the armored forces of Ukraine. So most likely during the next few days, we're going to receive additional updates from this territory as well. So let's wait for very important, let's say, changes on the ground. Now let's talk about the city of Toretsk, and we have lots of very interesting updates, and the most important are coming from the area between the city of Toretsk itself and the city of Pivnichne. And according to the geolocations, the video that was published by the Ukrainians, people, different sources managed to geolocate a lot of episodes from this video, and as you can see, according to this video, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the prison, which was considered as a very powerful stronghold of the armored forces of Ukraine, but the Ukrainians managed to hold their lines around the prison just for 1 or 2 weeks or something like this. So the prison was captured, and the Russians are moving further inside of the city of Toretsk, and the situation is getting very poor for the Ukrainians. Now let's move further. Let's talk about Chasiv Yar. The Russians managed to improve their positions a little bit around between Grigorovka and Kalinovka. In this video, we can see how the Ukrainians were bombing and attacking the Russian forces exactly in this point. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor. As for Sever's direction, nothing special. As for the Kupiansk, northern Kupiansk direction, also nothing special happened during the previous 24 hours. And now let's talk about the Kursk direction, where the Russians continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces with FAPs, so with FAP 500, with FAP 1500, with FAP 300, 3000. So significant number of explosions, significant number of aviation strikes. The Ukrainians suffer significant losses, and basically the front line was stabilized by the Russians. Once again, anyway, we have some changes. It's not like changes, it's just adjustments of map based on the geolocations and videos we continue receiving. So for example, based on this video, we have adjusted the map in Ukrainian favor. The Russians were bombing this tree line because they were Ukrainian FPV drone operators. So there's one strike, another strike, and this part was added to Ukrainian territory. We continue receiving updates from Mala Loknya. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces. So everything is coming to the Russian greatest counterattack. The Ukrainians don't have enough of time. They don't have enough of engineering equipment. They don't have materials to prepare let's say, long-term fortifications in the strongholds. And the Western sources are saying that Ukrainians are not planning to do this, and that as soon as the Russians and when the Russians are going to begin their offensive, most likely the Ukrainians will start running away and evacuation, extraction from this territory. So let's wait, but because now currently the Russians are not interested in forcing the Ukrainians to fall back from this territory, they still have significant number of forces in this direction. So for Russians, it's better if the Ukrainians will keep them here, but not redeploy them back to the Pokrovsk direction. Furthermore, today we are expecting for additional statements from the President of the Republic of Belarus, Lukashenko. Yesterday, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Republic of Belarus reported that Ukrainians have concentrated 14,000 army along the border with Belarus. So today we are waiting for additional provocations, additional very important statements from the authorities of Belarus. So maybe something big is going to happen in this area as well. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds to we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.